Dear student, welcome back to English literature class. We are continuing with Hearts and Hands. In the last video, I stopped where the glum-faced man is reassuring Miss Fairchild that marshals handcuffed themselves to their prisoners so that they wouldn't run away. And he also adds something by praising, in order to praise Mr. Easton, saying that Mr. Easton knows his business. All right. And Miss Fairchild understands that Mr. Easton is a quite capable marshal. Okay. Now from here we will continue. I hope all of you have the textbook with you. This is page number 71. Will we see you again soon in Washington? Asked the girl. So Miss Fairchild asked whether they could meet again in Washington. So this shows that Miss Fairchild is interested in Mr. Easton and she would like to meet him again. Not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. So Mr. Easton says that, yeah, no, I don't think we will meet very soon because you know that I don't have any more butterfly days. That is, I don't have any more freedom. This is again ironical. We will come to that later. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply without the gloss of style and manner. Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. I think the air here agrees with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. So, in this dialogue, Miss Fairchild expresses her desire to stay in the West. So, this is like an indirect proposal to Mr. Easton, saying that she would like to um marry Mr. Easton and would like to settle in the West. This shows a willingness to settle there. You can see her eyes were shining softly. That shows that that eyes reflect your thoughts, isn't it? And now then she looked outside the car window and she's lost in the world of imagination. And then she started talking in a very genuine manner from her heart. She revealed that her mother was also staying with her in Denver during the summer. And then just a week ago only, mother left her because father was not well. So to take care of him, she went back to her father. But at the same time, she is ready to settle in the West because the weather, the climate here agrees with her. Okay, it is favorable for her. She loves the weather there. And then she just generally tells money is not everything. Maybe she's comparing the life in Washington with the life now. That is, in Washington, a lot of money is needed, but here you can live a happy life. And she understands that it is not money that is very important. So she makes a general statement here and showing that she doesn't value money the most. But then she continues, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. But people generally, what do? They think that money is everything and they misunderstand things. Because they misunderstand things, they don't really understand life and they act in a stupid manner. But actually, she herself doesn't understand the reality of the situation. That we will come to know later only. All right, let us continue. Say, Mr. Marshall, growled the glum faced man. This isn't quite fair. I'm needing a drink and having had a smoke all day. Haven't you talked long enough? Take me in the smoker room, won't you? I'm half dead for a pipe. Now the glum faced man interferes and interrupts again and requests Mr. Marshall, addressing Mr. Easton as Mr. Marshall, and requests him to and demands that he wants a smoke very urgently because he didn't have a drink or a smoke all day. So he should be taken to the smoker room in order to have a smoke. Otherwise, he's half dead for a pipe. Okay. He very badly wants a smoke. Now, taking the situation to his favor, Mr. Easton also gets up. So both the travelers gets up and then walks away. The bound travelers rose to their feet. Okay, let's move to the next slide. The bound travelers rose to their feet, Easton with the same slow smile on his face. I can't deny a petition for tobacco, he said lightly. It's the one friend of the unfortunate. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, you know. He held out his hand for a farewell. Now, just making use of the opportunity, he just tells Miss Fairchild that, I cannot deny the petition for tobacco. He really wants to smoke. And you know that it is the one friend of the unfortunate. Unfortunate people always rely on tobacco. Okay. See, you should not, children, you should not take this sentence so seriously. Um, it is never, the smoking is, cigarettes are never a friend of fortunate or unfortunate. It's always an enemy of a man. Okay, of the man. Now, anyway, Mr. Easton makes use of this opportunity and says goodbye to Miss Fairchild and tells him, duty calls. He held out his hand for a farewell, pretending that he is so duty conscious, he's a duty conscious officer, and just gives a handshake and leaves the place immediately. But before leaving, she tells, It's too bad you are not going east, she said, reclothing herself with manner and style. But you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose. So, from this dialogue, we understand that Miss Fairchild doesn't want to part with Mr. Easton and she's expressing her sadness, okay, unwillingness to leave Mr. Easton. But anyway, what to do? You have to go to Leavenworth prison, right? Then Mr. Easton continues. Yes, said Mr. Easton. I must go on to Leavenworth. Yes, Mr. Easton is very sure about his words and he tells that he has to go to Leavenworth prison. The two men sidled down the aisle into the smoker room. So now both of them advanced towards the smoker room. Now we are going to the end of the lesson, which always O. Henry is famous for, the twisted ending. It's quite interesting. Let's read this. The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. Said one of them, that Marshall is a good sort of chap. Some of these Western fellows are all right. Now here, the first passenger tells that the Marshal is really a very good person, and you know that this Western fellows, some of the Western fellows are really good. So he's praising the Marshal. Listening to this, the second passenger answers, Pretty young to hold an officer like that, isn't he? Asked the other. Oh, so this Marshal is quite young. He's too young to hold such an office, such a responsible office. The first passenger answers, Young? Exclaimed the first speaker. Why? Oh, didn't you catch on? Say, did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand? Yes, this is the sting in the tail, okay? I referred to in the beginning. What did he say? See, have you ever seen a prisoner's right, that is a marshal's right hand, handcuffed to prisoner's left hand? That is, always the prisoner's right hand is handcuffed to marshal's left hand. So that is why, that is where we come to know, the reader comes to know that the real prisoner is Mr. Easton and the real marshal is the glum-faced man. All right, I hope you understood this. So the astute traveler, the astute passenger, the passenger who's really shrewd, he is the one who identified the real marshal. He understood that it was a play. It was actually uh, a role played by the real marshal in order to safeguard Mr. Easton from this awkward situation. Okay, so that he doesn't have to reveal his identity as the criminal in front of his old friend who is interested in him, maybe because it is just for a short while, right? They're not going to meet again, so he just wanted to safeguard Mr. Easton. That's the reason he enacted the role of a criminal for a short while. So this shows the generosity of the real marshal, the glum-faced man. I hope you understood this. So children, it is the timely interference of the real marshal that protected Mr. Easton from further embarrassment. All right. I hope you understood this lesson. Now, let us move to the next slide. That is, let us know. Let's study the appropriateness of the title. So the title Hearts and Hands, how appropriate it is. You know that the heart part of the title refers to the selfless, that is, the generous heart of the real marshal. He does a great sacrifice, and that is his own good name, in order to safeguard Mr. Easton, the real criminal. He tagged himself as the convict to protect Mr. Easton. And his timely interference. See, he cut short the conversation of Miss Fairchild and Mr. Easton by asking Mr. Easton to take him for a smoke. Right? If the conversation had extended, probably she would come to know the truth, which might break her heart and also put Mr. Easton in an awkward situation. See, one more thing is, though it is not mentioned clearly in the lesson, the hearts part of the title also signifies the love or affection that lay between Mr. Easton and Miss Fairchild. Okay. The hands part of the title is related to Mr. Easton. It is his right hand which is handcuffed, but due to the girl's dreamy nature, she failed to notice the reality. But of course, the generous heart of the real marshal helped the girl from being heartbroken. If he had not interrupted the conversation, this would have continued, isn't it? And she would be heartbroken to know that Mr. Easton was the criminal. The beautiful manner in which Mr. Easton enacted the role of a marshal, understanding the intention of the policeman, is quite interesting. We can see the smart coordination between the policeman and the prisoner here. That is, the glum-faced man and Mr. Easton. Like in the other short stories of O. Henry, there is a twisted ending here too. It is after the policeman and the prisoner left the scene, we come to know about the reality that that too from the casual conversation of two passengers, right? Who were listening to most of the conversation between these people. Even among the two passengers, only one was able to understand the reality. That is, it is the right hand of Easton which was handcuffed with the left hand of the marshal, the other person, right? It was he alone who understood that Mr. Easton was the criminal and the glum faced man was the marshal. So he praised the generous nature of the marshal, and we can see that the title is very, very appropriate. I hope you understood it. Now let us study the theme of the story. Hearts and Hands. It's a story about kindness, generosity, right? The author is, author O. Henry is famous for his ironic short stories. Okay, so the first theme is compassion or kindness, generosity. In the coach of B&M Express, Miss Fairchild spots her old friend, Mr. Easton. The first reaction was, of course, joy. But on seeing that he was handcuffed, she was horrified. The glum faced man, being very shrewd and observant, noticed the initial embarrassment of Mr. Easton on meeting his old friend. He observed this. So, what did he do? Being a very compassionate man, the real marshal, that is the glum faced man, pretended to be the convict, that is the criminal, and addressed Mr. Easton, who is the criminal, as Mr. Marshall, right? This he did only to save Mr. Easton and Miss Fairchild from embarrassment. Miss Fairchild also believed what the glum faced man said without any further thought. She, like the readers, yeah, we also think like that in the beginning, right? Get carried away by Mr. Easton's good looks. She was relieved to know that Mr. Easton was a respectable man. Perhaps, she gave great importance to prestige and status in the society. When Miss Fairchild continued her conversation and indirectly proposed Mr. Easton by expressing her willingness to settle in the West, again the real marshal interrupted and requested Mr. Easton to take him to the smoker's room. This action of his again prevented Mr. Easton to continue the conversation. Otherwise, he would have to continue lying, right? The more they were allowed to talk, the worse situation would become. Of course, Mr. Easton also was as quick as the real marshal. He thought he understood the real marshal's intention, and he made use of the opportunity, and he said that, yeah, I cannot deny tobacco smoking, and because it is one friend of the unfortunate. Okay, he's just said that and left the place, escaped from Miss Fairchild, isn't it? The real marshal is a selfless man, as it is without his as he did everything without any ulterior motive. Okay, his intention was very pure, and that was to protect Mr. Easton from being embarrassed or being nervous, and Miss Fairchild from being heartbroken. Okay, so we can understand that the theme is compassion. It is the compassionate heart of the real marshal that saved Mr. Easton and also Miss Fairchild. Okay, and of course, appearance can be deceptive. It is the handsome appearance of Mr. Easton that made all of us believe that, oh, he is the real Marshal, and Miss Fairchild also. Okay? So we should never get, the writer suggests that we should never get carried away by the appearance and jump to conclusion. Sometimes we will ignore the seemingly obvious details. I hope you understood the theme also. Now let us go to the last slide. Let us know about the style of narration used by the writer. He uses third person narration. There is no involvement of, you can't see the narrator in the story, right? And he also creates an element of suspense, and which is revealed only at the reality is revealed only at the end of the story. Now, another important technique the writer has used here is irony. You know, irony means, literally it means something. Okay, outwardly it means something, but actually, contextually, in the situation, it has a different meaning. Let us see what is situational irony. See, the situation is like this. The appearance is the handsome young man. He, Mr. Easton, he looked like Marshall from his appearance. But actually, the glum faced, the rough man appeared to be the convict, right? For others, for the readers as well as for the passengers, except for Miss Fairchild also, right? And that's why, without questioning, she just accepted that fact. She didn't even notice that it was the right hand of the of Mr. Easton, which was handcuffed to the left hand of the marshal. All right? Yes. So that is called a situational irony. Now, what is verbal irony? I have mentioned it so many times as I was explaining, but here you will understand it clearly. Now, character says something, but actually it means something else. All right? See, he's taking me to Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years of counterfeiting. Here, the glum-faced man says this to Miss Fairchild. But actually, what does it mean? Who is being taken? It is Mr. Easton who is the criminal. He is taken by the real marshal, the glum-faced man, to the Leavenworth prison for 7 years, and he will be there for 7 years for counterfeiting. The counterfeiting was done by Mr. Easton. Okay, so that is why it is called as ironical. Then Mr. Easton says, I had to do something. Why? In order to make money, right? But what does Miss Fairchild understand? Miss Fairchild thinks that, oh, he is doing the job of a marshal in order to make money. All right? But actually, Mr. Easton meant that he had to do something. It is something illegal in order to make money. All right? So from that, we can understand that he is the criminal. He's a fraud, right? Another one, Mr. Easton knows his business. Here, Miss Fairchild thinks that, oh, Mr. Easton knows he's a very capable policeman, and so he knows his business. He knows how to do the job of a marshal. But actually, what did he mean? He meant that, oh, he knows his business of counterfeiting, right? That was his business, right? He knows how to do illegal things. Now, another dialogue of Mr. Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. Here, Mr. Easton meant that his days of freedom is gone because he is going to be imprisoned. But Miss Fairchild thinks that he doesn't have any more freedom because he's too busy with his job as a marshal. Another verbal irony, I can't deny a petition for tobacco. Here, Mr. Easton actually meant that glum-faced man is his boss, that is a policeman, and so he cannot deny him, right? But Miss Fairchild understands that Mr. Easton is the marshal, so he has to take the glum faced man who's the criminal, according to Miss Fairchild, to the smoker room. I hope you understood it. Next one is dramatic irony. The reader perceives something that the character of the story does not know. Actually, which character doesn't know about it? Miss Fairchild doesn't know about it. But of course, being a reader, we can see through the things, right? So that is why it is called as dramatic irony. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. So here, what does it mean? Actually, um, Miss Fairchild generally makes a statement that people always misunderstand things, whereas she herself has not understood who the real prisoner was. Right. But the reader, being a reader, we can see through that things that Mr. Easton is the prisoner, and that is, and the glum faced man is the marshal. Okay. And he's not able to respond to the request made by, that is the indirect proposal made by Miss Fairchild. She also expressed her desire to live and settle in the West. But he already mentioned that he is no more a free man. Okay. And you know that Mr. Easton's desire for money is responsible for this unpleasant situation. It is all because of his greed for money, desire for money, that led him to this unpleasant situation. Okay, that is why he's going to be imprisoned. I hope you understood this also. Now, what are the figures of speech used by the writer? The writer uses personification when Miss Fairchild says, I think the air here agrees with me. So that means that the climate is favorable for her. Climate here in the West is favorable for her. So the air is personified here. All right. Then hyperbole. I'm half dead for a pipe. So here there's a bit of exaggeration which is used by the glum faced man, the real marshal, to um, force, to urge Mr. Easton's to get up and move away from, to escape from Miss Fairchild. Okay, so hyperbole is used here. I hope you understood this also. So this is the end of Hearts and Hands, children. If any doubt is there, you can clear it in the doubt clearing session. Thank you, children.